Although you disagree, the bears would argue that this is the section of the foundation that is the least sustainable. Make us more comfortable with that degree of focus. Perhaps the hyperscalers are only in the middle of an end-user story. That means that 95% of the hyperscalers, like Microsoft, are enterprise. To put it another way, if you're a Microsoft customer and you're following this path, you're going via Microsoft and no one else. Whether it's Google or Amazon, you will encounter other hyperscalers. Since it's not like Microsoft is a customer, I believe that when you talk about focus today, it's really more about perception. After that, you must descend to the thousands of businesses. Therefore, I don't think that actually tells the tale. It ultimately comes down to the end user. And as it happens, hyperscalers are essentially acting as intermediaries, allowing users to access the computing that they are buying from NVIDIA. And it's okay if Dan Combe or Josh Brown place an order via Microsoft. The order comes through Microsoft, but it was actually placed through you and me. Microsoft places it through NVIDIA, that's all. And Josh, one of the things is that, from a component viewpoint, everything we see is growing in demand and will be in age in a few weeks. And when I talk about bears, I often suggest that the bears may locate the AI revolution 10 more places, like the spreadsheets, the New York City office building, Metro North, or Jersey Transit. I believe that's where many people have missed it, especially now that Apple has taken over. With the iPhone 16, the consumer revolution, and 300 million iPhones that haven't been updated in 4 years, Apple is now responsible for all of this. OpenAI and NVIDIA will eventually be very helpful. Thus, we will return to Apple shortly. You brought up Blackwell in the beginning of the broadcast. Therefore, I have a question for you. For those who are unaware, please correct me if I'm mistaken, but Blackwell is the next generation of the cutting-edge standard system that NVIDIA is now selling. Jensen Huang described this as a step function change above. Additionally, one of the worries before the call was that Blackwell might not be released in the quarter that people had initially expected. Additionally, he made a special effort to clarify to the sell side during the call that Blackwell's delay is due to a new mask rather than modifications to its functionality. For the investor who isn't an engineer, what does that mean? In essence, they have raised yield, and from a technological standpoint, the process of producing it has become even more efficient. But in actuality, you're only talking about a few months, and they've really improved it via this process. The worry was that, oh, this is a delay, this could spoil a party. They improved its efficiency, making it more profitable from a margin standpoint as they manufacture it. We believe that there is tens of billions, and this is only the beginning of the next part of that tale. They said, okay, billions in the CH. Therefore, moving Blackwell shipments into Q4 has no substantial impact on demand or profits projections. It's merely a natural occurrence when introducing a new technology. It doesn't always fall on a specific date on the calendar. Additionally, releasing something too soon, bugs or otherwise, is the last thing they should ever do. For that reason, they must ensure that this item is golden. Since all of the infrastructure is based on it, the fact that some will be seen in the October quarter puts an end to that. Yes, and look, I just think that as more people begin to check, they realize that demand isn't just MA7 but also other businesses and suburban areas, which is why I think that we sit here for the next few weeks and months and that the stock is at an all-time high. And keep in mind that you haven't even reached Europe. At this point, the world is truly experiencing a century. With some China outside of the restrictions, the story is much more focused on the United States. I have a question regarding the finances. In addition to the previously announced, unapproved $7.5 billion purchase, they announced an additional $50 billion buyback. In the event of a market-wide sell-off or whatever, would it make more sense for them to really carry out this authorization or just store it in their back pocket? The second half of that debate is whether these buybacks are actually being done to reduce the float or if they are only being used to sterilize new share issuance and stock-based remuneration. As you can see, I don't believe that press release buybacks are a means of just delivering a signal. I do believe that they have identified some of the volatility that may observe. In my perspective, the Black Monday Tokyo fear sort of, got in front of their radar. It's a real buyback, but the truth is that NVIDIA, OpenAI, and Microsoft are currently the top 3 AI engineers in the. As much as people may worry about options or other remuneration, such as new shares, they must retain the AI engineers because doing so is ultimately essential to their success. In reality, though, it's an incremental buyback. They will, in my opinion, immediately follow Cook and Apple's lead. After they'd put it into practice, we won't be talking about $50 billion in a year or two. Instead, we'll be talking about a $75 billion or $100 billion repurchase. They just must do something with the excessive cash flow. Simply plugging everything back into CAPEX is not an option. All right, now let's display this profits graph. According to consensus projections, not yours, Dan, these are the quarterly earnings which hit 68 cents in Q2 2025. However, we're at 74 cents for the next quarter and 80 cents for the one after that. Are you above this? Are you beneath this? In contrast to the consensus, where are you? You see, we think that the run rate per quarter will actually be higher than $1.25. In other words, you will now begin to consider the years that are ahead of you, $5 to $5.50 per share when 2025 and 2026 are taken into consideration. That is to say, if you are purchasing this stock, your primary attention should be on the $5 earnings power figure. That's my perspective. And if you look at an annual run rate, you're thinking, well, when does Blackwell ramp? Because you're also looking at the majority of investors in this name and beyond. When this is truly at scale, how do the numbers appear? And from a buy-side or whisper standpoint, I believe that $5 is the out-year number. For that reason, when you look at some of these, the focus is primarily on where this is headed in the upcoming 12 to 18 months. We discussed Apple at WWDC for that reason. Hair's come out. Stock is at $190, nothing here about it. And it's $230 today, right? After 2.5 months. My whole point, then, is that sometimes the story is lost in the initial knee-jerk reaction to some of these things. Not just for NVIDIA, but for the larger tech industry in terms of that multiplier. The $1 to the $8 to $10 multiplier, which is, in my opinion, the most significant thing to the larger tech. In terms of earnings power, you have 25 times, yes, 25 times, on a $5 yearly run rate. In what way does that affect the stock? Math was not my major. Then you start looking at, say, $125, and then you realize that you are truly making $5.25. Are you able to reach $175 or $150? The bull case of reaching $150 or $175, in my opinion, is basically like, okay, I'm looking at the next 2 to 3 years. As all of this develops, this company may have $5 or $6 in earnings power. As this all begins to unfold, it is essentially the bull case if you are looking at the long run.